What's going on, guys? It's Flaws, and in this video we're going to be ranking Marvel rival characters from the worst to the best. Starting off, should be no surprise to anyone, is Storm. I think Storm's just in a really bad place right now, where it feels like a worse Iron Man, and you're really only useful for your ultimate ability, it seems like at the moment. But if they kind of increase that movement up a little bit, do a little bit more damage, then she could be useful. But right now, definitely the worst character in the game. Next we have Wolverine. I think Wolverine's going to be a little painful for some people to hear that he's second worst in the game. But his playstyle is really bad. It just kind of revolves around trying to find one pick on a dealer that's out of place. And if your whole playstyle is to try to get like one pick on someone playing the game incorrectly, that's really not a great playstyle. And if he does jump into a team full of 6 people, he's going to get focused down almost immediately and then just picked off. The Hulk has a similar playstyle to Wolverine, which if you pair the two together, it's probably not the worst thing. There's just way better combos for you to do out there. And the Hulk's whole playstyle is just to take damage, soak it up, and push through it. Kind of similar to what Thor is supposed to do, but I do think Thor does a better job of actually dealing damage back, as well as has a little bit more mobility and a little bit better kit. Although it hurts me to put Iron Man this low, I think Iron Man is just one of those characters that does put a lot of damage output into the other team, and like they might have a tough time trying to pick you off on certain team comps, but for the most part, the other team could just ping you in the air and everyone just focuses you down. Spider-Man also is this low just because you have to work so hard for every single one of your kills. I think he can be useful into certain team comps, but you're trying to hit like strange combos on the other team and they can kind of just focus you down, and it almost makes it hard for your team to even heal you and keep you in the fight. I'm putting Thor this low just because his kit's very, very limited, kind of similar to the Hulk and Wolverine, where his whole kit is just to walk forward and swing his hammer. I mean, it doesn't really involve like the most skilled plays when you're doing that, so the other team can back off. They have different counter plays that they can do to try to like whittle you down. But I think Thor is a decent tank. The only problem with him that I see is he doesn't really have that survivability that a lot of other tanks do, like holding a shield up, healing, things like that. He just kind of, if he gets bursted down, he gets bursted down. I have Magic next just because very similar to the people I've been saying so far, where it's almost like you go in solo, try to get a one pick, but you can get whittled down by the enemy team once again. It can be viable into certain team comps. I just think it's not the best character to play in every single game. Black Panther I have above Magic just because you can move very quickly on Black Panther as well as dealing damage in between those different abilities. Also, Black Panther has a great ultimate on top of just being able to like maneuver around the enemy team, doing damage while also staying alive. I don't think he's a great character. Namora's next, and I think he does have a decent kit. If you pair him with Luna Snow as well, he can do an insane amount of damage. The only problem with Namora is it seems like if someone does get very close to you, you're probably going to lose a lot of those fights. He has great damage output, but he's not one of the best characters in the game by any means. The Punisher is pretty low as well, just because I don't think, besides his ultimate, I don't think the damage he puts out is really meaningful unless he's in his turret, but you're almost guaranteeing yourself to die if the enemy team's actually calming to each other and they can tell you like, oh, let's just burst this guy down, get him out of his turret. You can have anyone jump on you, just get you out of your turret, kill you quickly. His damage hitbox is pretty big, so it's pretty easy just to whittle him down. But I do think he has different places where he can fit into a team comp. It just seems like he's not the greatest in every single game. Captain America's next. He can be very useful in a lot of different fights where if the enemy team has a Punisher, has someone that sits in the backline and just shoots constantly, he can jump on them pretty easily. He can jump on the healers. He does a really good job of just opening up a front to back comp, but he does kind of have a little bit of a weird playstyle where it's similar to Thor and the Hulk, where it's like you just kind of swing, try to hit your shield throws. I do think there are just better tanks that you can be playing. Penny I didn't think was the best when I started playing the game, but she does have a net that you could trap other opponents in if they go in quickly, which kind of makes them almost useless for a second, and your team can just whittle them down and kill them quickly if you do trap anyone in front of your whole team with the net. Also, the survivability on Penny is pretty decent, as well as putting out damage, so just all around a pretty decent tank. Iron Fist is next. Although Iron Fist does like to just jump into the backline and just start taking fights, he has like a great amount of movement and can also heal himself. If your healers are a little busy with someone else, he can still top himself back up and get to full health, as well as being able to dodge every ultimate ability in the game that does damage. I think Iron Fist is a great person just to choose if you're going to be diving into those backlines. Loki is one of those characters that can put an insane amount of damage out, as well as healing all your team up to full HP and keeping them topped off through the game. But he can also have tough times on certain maps if you're maybe pushing a cart, or you're having weird angles where you can't really get back into a site. He has some problems there, but I think for the most part, Loki's a very solid pick and you can find a lot of success on him. I have Black Widow next, which has a similar problem to Loki where on certain maps it's tough to find an angle, but I think Black Widow can be very successful and put out a high amount of damage, as well as bursting enemy opponents that really don't see that burst coming when they're on full HP and think that they're safe. Adam Warlock can be very useful, especially with his resurrection or cocoon ability. But I think Adam Warlock should be pretty high just because being able to res a teammate that might have gotten picked can keep you in the game, and his healing is very decent as well. Star-Lord's one that is tough because you have to be pretty skilled and understand how his kit actually works, where it's like you can reset his reload by using your like dash ability. But Star-Lord can put out an insane amount of damage, as well as having a very solid ultimate to pair with that. Speaking of insane amounts of damage, Moon Knight, if he gets a good flank off or he just gets a decent angle on the enemy team, can use his abilities to just burst someone in the backline that doesn't even know that he has an angle very quickly, on top of just putting out consistent damage, and find those picks, which makes him a very solid choice. Cloak and Dagger is a pretty good healer that can also have good mobility. The only problem I see with Cloak and Dagger is you can still get picked off pretty easily, and if you are low health, it's not like you're healing up instantly and you can get bursted down. I have Scarlet Witch decently high in this list just because I think Scarlet Witch, she doesn't really have to like think too much. You can just hold left click and walk at the other team. As long as you're playing it somewhat decently, you're gonna have a lot of success in your games. Squirrel Girl also has an insane amount of damage that she can just shoot out. It doesn't have to think too much. Just shoot some damage at some health bars and you're probably gonna do decent in the game. The ultimate's not the greatest, but I think just the kit alone does a lot of damage. Hawkeye feels like a better Black Widow, on top of the ultimate being able to see clones of whoever's kind of running away while you're bursting them with damage is a really good choice. He also does something very similar to Black Widow, but I think he has a little bit more ability, so he's actually a little bit higher on this list. While he does put out an insane amount of damage, I think he can also just burst someone so quickly that they don't even understand what's going on before they're dead. I have Rocket Raccoon this high, mainly because he can resurrect teammates once they die, which once again I think is very important in this game of Marvel Rivals. But I do think that Rocket Raccoon also has a very solid amount of healing that he can put out, as well as damage, and I think that's pretty important to be able to just kind of transition between the two, because if you're not really putting out damage with your team as well and everyone's full health, you're kind of useless for a couple seconds, which isn't the worst thing, but I do think that he just has a pretty balanced kit. Luna Snow being able to be paired with Jeff and Namor, on top of just having a pretty solid kit all around, I think is very decent. But the one thing that I think makes her very good is she can stun people that are jumping on top of her, which is really something that a lot of healers don't have in the game, but I think that they should, just because if anyone jumps on the backline, you can stun them, everyone turns, kills them, and you're back to it. Magneto puts out a lot of damage, as well as having a shield that lasts for 2 seconds or 2.5 seconds that can just kind of block some damage while your team resets, gets healed back up, and then you get back to it. The Winter Soldier, although at first doesn't seem like the kit's too great, the ultimate alone, being able to just be able to spam it over and over and over and not have to actually do so much damage, but you can just basically burst people down so quickly, ultimate again, burst them down, and you just keep getting those resets, makes Winter Soldier extremely good. As I'm sure is no surprise to anyone, if you've ever played against Venom, he's very annoying to jump onto your backline. He's almost impossible to kill if you're playing against a good one. And I think Venom is just something that a lot of teams actually need in their comp when they can't really push through, they can't really break through that front line to get into the back line. Ella being a character that does an insane amount of damage is obviously by no surprise really high on this list. Ella can also get away very quickly if she needs to like reset and get some heals from the backline when they're pushed a little bit too far up. You can also right click and have a huge burst on tanks, but Hela does an insane amount of damage and is a big threat on a lot of teams' comps. Psylocke's this high on the list just because pretty much everyone I mentioned who has to jump into the backline, get a pick, and get out, can't do it even close as well as Psylocke can, just because going invisible is something that you can do. You can go invisible, run through the entire enemy team without anyone knowing, one-shot someone with her combo if you know it well, and then just dash back out to your team. Like, that's such a huge part of this game, and it's a really easy way to turn like a game that seems like it's pretty lost to you killing 2 healers, 1 healer in the backline, and then wiping them. Mantis is this high on the list just because she does a lot of damage and she can also heal a really decent amount. Also, the ultimate's not bad where you can pretty much keep your team alive no matter what. So I think Mantis for that alone is a very solid choice. I know a lot of you might disagree with this, but I have Groot very high on this list, mainly because he's such a solid pick with kind of forcing them into weird angles, forcing them to be pushed back. And you can just kind of control the map a lot more than you can with other characters. Groot feels like someone also that you can cut their team in half if you're pushing through. Your healers, if you get a good wall up between your healers and their damage or their tanks, it feels like they aren't even in the fight, so you can just kind of burst the rest of the team off really quickly. But Groot can be very solid if you have a good person piloting the champ. The next one's no surprise to anyone. Jeff the Shark, I think, is a very, very solid pick. Can completely change the course of the game by one ultimate. Has a very solid amount of healing that he can put out into the team and doesn't have to really aim his mouse too much while he's healing, which is a positive thing if you're a healer and you have people that are flying around the map. I think Jeff's main thing that he has that a lot of the other healers don't have is just the ability to put out a lot of damage while you're just sitting in the back healing the rest of your team. I think the main thing Jeff has is the ability to heal himself and keep himself alive better than some of the other healers that were mentioned before. And last, I think the best character in Marvel Rivals is Doctor Strange, mainly because Doctor Strange has so many different abilities and uses to his kit. For one instance, like if anything's being ulted into your teammates, you can just throw your shield up for a millisecond and block whatever damage is coming through, like an Iron Man ult, a Scarlet Witch ult, or kind of whatever damage is coming through very quickly. You can just throw your shield up. You can control exactly how long it's being held up for, and you can really just hold off your team's pressure for a couple seconds, which is a very good use for his kit. On top of just having the teleport to completely change the way that you play every single round, that alone on top of his damage makes Doctor Strange the best character for the game. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video or have any questions or kind of comments about where I put a champ that you disagree with, let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.